Welcome to How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. In this podcast, we dive into compassionate leadership in today's fast-paced business environment. With our experience and insights, we'll help you lead with heart while securing your career. Join us for engaging conversations and practical advice to elevate your leadership skills and make a real difference. I'm your host, Chris King, a Fortune 100 IT leader, alongside Roberto Torres, a seasoned startup engineering leader. Today, we're discussing how do you recognize that you are having success as a humane leader? How do you confirm that you are being humane and it's not just an illusion? Hey, Roberto, how you doing?
Chris, I'm doing really good. How about you?
I'm doing good. It's a little warm here in Tennessee. I know up there in the mountains where you're at, it doesn't get quite so humid, but this morning we had a dew point of 73 degrees, which means walking the dogs is very sweaty, very
Yeah.
hot. So I'm enjoying some air conditioning talking to you.
Oh, great, man.
So how are you doing in your new job as a humane leader? Are you looking for some signs that you're doing the right thing, some reinforcement?
Yes. As we spoke last week, I'm in this process of learning for ads, of listening for ads, and just talking one ads. So far, it's been so good. I enjoy every day going to work, and I only been one weekend this period of work, but my mind has rushed with all the ideas, all the knowledge, everything that I've got. So far, yes, indeed, I have enjoyed a lot and still on track of being a human leader.
Excellent. I think the excitement level, is a key indicator. Granted, this is very early in this current role. When I think about my past roles, kind of evaluating it in the rearview mirror, one of the signs that I thought of being a humane leader, a clear cut sign would be if some of your employees are willing to come to you and ask for help, like, hey, I'm stuck. If they come to you and say the sentence, I need help on this, I think it's very likely that you're being a humane leader in that aspect because they realize that you can help them and they're willing to admit that they need help.
Yeah, well, besides that, it is not also admitting, it's also that they recognize in you all the experience and the solutions that you will bring to the table based on the problems that they are. So I think it is a intrinsic motivation that third people, other people will recognize in you and say, hey, Roberto, we have this meeting with this maybe new provider, customer, or something like that. Would you join us? Because your insights are are helpful. So yes, indeed.
Yeah, especially when it crosses boundaries too. So, for example, coming from a very large company, we divided everything, right? The people who worked on Microsoft Exchange did not necessarily work much with the people who worked on SQL, and definitely didn't work with the people who worked on Oracle, et cetera, right? And so everybody was very siloed. And I think in a large environment like that, a sign that teams want to reach out to you to collaborate. So not your direct reports, but now peers, maybe even people senior to you, if they're seeking your insight and asking you to participate in something, is also a very good sign that you're building strong relationships that cross the official hierarchy boundaries, right? The official org chart would say, the database people don't necessarily collaborate with the network people that much unless it's a very specific project. But if there's some things going on like, hey, we'd like your insight on the new AT&T contract, even though that you're in charge of the ERP systems, it shows that, hey, they like your insights. They know that you're open-minded to evaluate things and have value, in offering your insights into things. Versus if you're not being humane, you won't even know the RFP went out.
Yeah. And And let me give you an analogy that might work in this, regardless if it's a startup or a big company. This is like playing chess, you know. When you play chess, you don't focus just in one piece of the board. You have to focus on all the pieces because you might go with the right side and the country, the guy that you're playing with against might do a strike or something on the left of the board. This is the same. If you only stick to your business, to your staff, you might not be helping the other departments. And being a humane leader is to be really aware of all the board, all the pieces, and when someone asks you, you provide an answer. And when they don't, but you see something particular, you have to raise your hand and say, "Hey, man, I'm seeing this. Be aware of these problems, these challenges, or maybe go with this way because with a previous experience, you have seen it, you have faced these problems, and rather than having a headache, you will provide maybe the medicine, the aspirin to bring solution to this." So I think that is a humane leader in which it provides solutions and it is always on help on mode.
Yes. Yeah. Helping the other's perspective absolutely is key. One other thing I thought of while you were talking about, and again, it's big company versus little company, right? So big companies, we have usually very formal performance review processes. And one of those in our company, we had feedback where the boss who's going to be giving you the performance review seeks input from others via an anonymous system that's online, and so the people could say whatever they wanted about Chris, and your boss would typically share it, because even though you may not agree, all right, so I'm trying to evaluate am I being a humane leader, I want to listen to that feedback, and I may completely disagree with it, right? So let's take the worst case scenario. You completely disagree with that feedback. But if you can listen to that feedback and say, look, I think that person is totally wrong, but that's how they feel. You got to remember, it's their opinion. And so, are there some things you can do as a humane leader? And if you are willing to listen to that feedback that is not positive and try and figure out how you could change whoever's opinion that might have been, you are being a humane leader. Because a humane leader recognizes that opinions about you are just that, opinions. Doesn't mean you have to say, man, that is spot on, they're absolutely right. It means you listen to it and say, why does that person have that perspective? Am I okay with that perspective? Or do I need to try and do something to alter their perspective? So again, using the example of, pitching in and trying to help when people are asking you for it. If that person said, hey, every time I try and get a hold of Chris, he's too busy to help me. Well, that may be true. You may be very busy, but how did you convey to the person that you can't help them? Perhaps the humane leader needs to say, oh, you know what, I was a bit short with this person on the phone and saying I couldn't help. Maybe it's worth it to say, look, here's what I'm working on right now. I've got to finish this because the deadline is tomorrow, but on Monday we can dig into this. Would that be okay? A humane leader does some negotiation even when someone's asking you for a favor, right? So officially you don't need to do it, but the humane leader is going to take that feedback from performance reviews and say, yeah, I probably should have negotiated or communicated that a little bit differently to be more open to help. And I will try and do it a bit differently to try and get more connections with more people. Maybe my way works with 90% of the population I'm working with, but that 10% doesn't like it. So now how do I do it different? And I don't always know the right answer to that, but if a humane leader is going to reflect on it and think about it and will try to do something different, their opinion may never change, but the humane leader will try and do something to win over that remaining 10%.
Yeah, indeed. And I think I totally concur with you. And a humane leader also has to say, as you mentioned, also has to mention, excuse me, to say no. When someone approaches you, maybe it's with a request that it is not related to you, that they ask for something in particular, that they have a problem and they say, oh, Roberto, since he's a solutions guy, he will solve it. You have to read it and you have to say, as you mentioned, no, because this is my priority. Maybe I'll help you later. Rather than saying yes, 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 because you don't recognize yourself as a humane leader or as a successful leader by saying yes all the time. No, you, as we all have, a certain amount of hours during the day. We cannot go to a store, and say, I'm going to buy 4 hours to bring it onto the table and work more. No, you have the same hours. So rather than saying yes, 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 you have to say no, make, this is like, I don't know if you know about this. This is like the that the sandwich. There is the bread, the ham, and the bread. So what I think what you must do is the bread. It is the maybe the positive uh, things to say, and the ham is the negative. But it has to be like this. The bread. It is right now. I do help you, but the ham I can right now because I'm in this project right now in which it takes a lot of my time or my whole time, my full time, and then the ham again, excuse me, the bread, and say, but when I finish, I will reach you and we will see if it's something that I can help you. So I don't know if.
Yeah, I think what you're saying, I believe, is that if the person you're saying no to has a positive opinion of you, you're doing a very humane job of saying no, right? So in my examples where the feedback was people I said no to were not happy with me, that means I'm not being a perfect or a really good humane leader. I'm being a maybe better than average if 90% of the feedback's positive, but I need to win over that last 10%. And what you're expressing is, look, how do you say no? And can you get positive feedback from the people that you've told no because of these other priorities? A humane leader, you'll be able to measure that success if you think about how many different people are you saying no to, and do they still have a positive opinion of you? Do they still come to you and ask for help?
Oh
If you
yeah.
think back, and all the people that I said no to, I never hear from them ever again. That's a sign you're not being a humane leader. All
Yeah.
right, you're being a jerk, and you need to reflect on that and say, maybe the answer still has to be no for whatever reason, like you're saying, but you're not doing it in a humane way if they never come back to you. Because sometimes I am sure that those people, that 10% out there that are asking you for help, occasionally it is going to be in your wheelhouse, in your lane, and stuff you should be working on. So if you're shutting people down and you never hear from them again, that's a sign you are not a humane leader.
Yes, and actually also you had to apply politics, and when politics fails, you have to be diplomatic when certain things, and with doing that rather than being too harsh and saying, "Oh man, I cannot do it," and you turn away and you go see the other way. No, you have to apply politics because in the end, people are going to reach you in the future. Is going to reach you by saying, "Oh my God, I had to reach this guy and be nagging," or be willing, because in the end we are a team, regardless or where we are. As a company, we are a team. It was UP or Honeywell with thousands of employees, or a startup with less than maybe 10, 20, or 50 people. So in the end, we still had to be political and use diplomacy as much as needed when it's going to be needed.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of various measures. Being a scientist, trying to think in a scientific way of measuring being humane to ensure it's not an illusion. One way you could try and measure is just think about over your course of a day, a course of a week, how many phone calls or how many interactions did you have where you're asking someone to help you versus how many of the interactions are them asking you to help them, whether it's your direct reports, peers, bosses in other areas. I think if you have a greater percentage of people asking you for help, hey, Roberto, can you help me with this? Versus you asking others to get help or do things, you're probably leaning towards being a more humane leader. It doesn't mean that it's not the definitive answer, but when I think back again, reflecting on my long career, I always tried to be offering help way more than I was ever asking for help. I don't remember the ratio kind of thing from a science perspective, but I think if you're leaning towards people are contacting you and asking for help way more often than you're calling other people or contacting other people for help, you're probably being a pretty humane leader because people trust you. People see you as someone who can help them be successful and they want to interact with you.
Yeah, maybe that's why we are in IT, because we are a service and a service area, strategic business partners of the business. So yes, and doing that and recognizing yourself on when to say no, when to say yes, when to be coherent with your words and your actions, because you might say, I could help you, but I don't have time. Well, so please maybe say the opposite. I don't have time. But well, in the end. So, and one thing that also that I think that brings maybe no recognition of you as a leader are how people react with you with by talking or excuse me by sharing knowledge of something that you might not know. This week someone asked me, hey, do you think that either we go through the A path or the B path, and both were of knowledge that I'm not proficient. But they asked. And why do they ask? Because they couldn't maybe ask or whatever, but they did ask me. And I said, no, I think we should go with a big head because it's more prone to achieve our objectives. So in the end, I think when people ask you and you recognize, first of all, that maybe you're not proficient in that knowledge area or something, but you provide something with maybe hard data or hard substance, it is part of this recognition by third people to you, no?
Right, exactly. It's that humane quality that
Oh,
they're seeking out, right? Is they're seeking out a humane perspective on this domain area of knowledge. And again, you don't need to necessarily be the expert, but sometimes that wisdom of being the humane leader is what they're looking for because they're saying, look, the very binary objectives of evaluating it, it's a toss up. You could go plan A, plan B. Technically, we're looking at it, we can't find any differences. But maybe there's some aspect of it from a leadership perspective, the humane perspective, that you need to look at it and say, yeah, there is a reason why we'd go over this way. It's more aligned to some of our other goals that I'm aware of that maybe they're not aware of. Maybe you've had some experiences and other things where, hey, technically A and B are equal, but solution A has way less downtime, significantly less maintenance efforts. So our on-call team won't get paged as much. So to a degree, that can be, being a humane leader, because you're thinking about the longer term aspect of it. You're thinking about other people. I'm not operations, I'm development, but I'm thinking humanely about the operations guys. I don't want, or gals, don't wish them to be paged, in the middle of the night or on their holiday weekends and stuff because something crashed. So sometimes there is some humane thinking in solution providing, because you are trying to meet business objectives, technical objectives, but maybe there's some soft aspects to it, like the patch cycle, or it's more secure, or it's more robust, so it's less likely to need off-hours support. Those are humane qualities that they're seeking out in you to help with their decision making.
Yeah, you know, you know that I'm an analogy guy. I make analogies of most things. But what you told me right now, it is like you're being you're a layer of an onion. An onion has a lot of layers. And just because you are maybe near the core or in the middle, you have to think for other people as well, because the work that you do reflects on other layers and on other people, and the opposite as well, vice versa. But maybe your layer doesn't interact with another layer, with another people. But in the end, if you could bring something to the table that will ease their life, bring a solution, and not bring a problem, is something to be recognized. And also, being recognized as a leader is bringing a problem along with a solution, because everybody could bring some problems, but bringing solutions is what maybe it is something of a humane leader.
Yes, no, absolutely. And the more people are asking you for help, again, we mentioned that before, it is very much a sign that people are seeking you out. And that ratio, the more people that are seeking you, is a stronger indication that you're a humane leader, and it's not an illusion. But you do have to be concerned about the illusion, right? The reflection of self, our own egos. We tend to always think we are doing things perfectly, or we're trying really hard, so we know we're doing our best. And I think it can be challenging sometimes to reflect back and say, all right, maybe I'm not always being the best. Again, back to that kind of performance review feedback. Be willing as a humane leader to listen to feedback that you disagree with, because your success might be a bit of an illusion. There is the chance that you're not being totally humane, or maybe not being totally humane to a segment of the company for some reason, right? Long-standing arguments you've had with the ERP team when you were the network leader. So now you always have in the back of your mind this kind of problem you have with the ERP team. So as a humane leader reflects on those things and thinks back and takes all feedback, whether they agree with it or disagree with it, takes all that feedback and says, look, no matter what, that is Roberto's opinion of Chris. I disagree with it, Roberto, but I'm going to reflect on it well, why would Roberto think that? And the more people are seeking you out for help, I think is a strong indicator. But listen to that feedback and take into account that you're not always going to be perfect. The illusion is, if you think you are the perfect humane leader, it is an illusion.
Yeah, indeed. And one thing about the feedback that you mentioned, it is that it doesn't stick to the company or the year that you're living. It could go for many years later on, because people will recognize you today and in the future by the way you were a humane leader, not by the way a boss screams at other people. How it does provide brings a lot of pressure. How much a burnout created in another person. It will recognize you through the ages by how do you treat with them how did you treat them? You know, and it could go for many years. Maybe the people you used to work with at UOP recognize it today. Maybe they don't be in contact with you anymore, but they will recognize you. They will say, "Oh, I remember that Chris was an excellent leader. He provided not only solutions, but he gave me peace to myself, peace of mind with his leadership." So in the end, the recognition, it doesn't go immediately as you've been at first, but it goes along with all the ages and everything.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And I'm sure if you found every single person I ever worked with and every single person that ever reported to me or every single person I reported to, there will be times and feedback that I will disagree with, but also agree with. And the thing to reflect too is you're being this humane leader is reflecting and saying, well, at that time, let's say what was one of my first leadership roles, I only had a certain number of skills. And sometimes you're not going to be the perfect humane leader right away. I hope the listeners realize it is a journey over time, over much time, and you are going to make mistakes. But do what you can to reflect on that. Say, boy, I wish I wouldn't have dealt with that person that way. So, what am I going to do in the future? And I realized that, oh, I could have done that better. And now I'm in a somewhat similar situation. So I'm going to try a different way of approaching it. That's another sign of a humane leader. You're reflecting back, you look at what you did, you recognize that didn't come, the outcome there wasn't the way I wanted it to be, and you try and be better. I hope in my mind that when I left that I was the best humane leader as much of the time as I could possibly be. And I can sleep at night saying, yeah, there were times I made mistakes, but I reflect on them and I wouldn't do it that same way again. Can't redo the past, but I can sleep at night saying, I know I would always try and be better in the future. And I hope that our listeners just keep that in mind. It's just as long as you're on a continuous improvement path, making mistakes is okay. Just own up to them, recognize it was a mistake, try and move forward. And that makes a good humane leader.
Yes, yes. Learn from them, learn wise from them, and move on. Great, great. So with this, Chris, I think we could do the wrap up.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of How to Be a Humane Leader Without Losing Your Job. We hope our insights help you become a smarter and more strategic leader. Apply today's lessons to see a positive impact on your team and career. Catch all our episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Anchor, and YouTube. Join us next week when we discuss something trendy in the leadership world. Until then, stay humane and stay successful. See you later, Roberto.
Bye bye.